Have you ever noticed how you get really hungry after watching an anime with good food?
Yeah, it makes you want to go and make some yourself. Or order in.
No, it's maroon.
Kenny, is that a rice ball?
Yeah, made it myself.
But what's that inside it?
Jelly filled.
Oh, this isn't for kids, man.
Kyle just launched the Ava.
Ava launch!
Tetsuo! Ganida!
Onita?
It's over 9,000! Nani?
Configure the language logic interface for Japanese.
Kawaii-Fi.
Kawaii-Fi.
Kawaii-Fi!
Kawaii-Fi Radio!
Konnichiwa, and welcome to another episode of Kawaii-Fi Radio, the podcast where we look into the world of anime and manga and all things in between. I'm your host Kyle, and joining me are my co-hosts Coco and Kenny. Hi guys!
Hello.
Howdy.
Now, we've got plenty to talk about because it's a food episode and we love our food. I'm not that fat, I swear. But before we do dive into that, let's talk about something that kind of surprised us. We were expecting violence, we were expecting a bit of gore, but I was not expecting where Magical Girl Special Ops Oscar went in episode 3.
It is way too tortury for me. I just was not doing this anymore.
I mean-
Can't do this anymore. Was not expecting to do this from the start anyway. So
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it's, a modern take on the whole Magical Girls thing, and, villains will use horrible means to get what they want, but I felt that the whole sequence was just too dragged out.
It was unnecessary.
It's pretty gung-ho with the military. And I've read that the show actually has a military consultant.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. So we got to episode 3, and for those who are thinking of watching it, please be aware it's MA15. It's got some pretty confronting themes the further in you get, and we thought, hey, it might be cool, girl running around with guns as a magical girl defending other people.
Not to say that the fight scenes and the action and stuff like that and the themes presented aren't quite bad.
Honestly, I really wanted to enjoy watching it, and I wanted to keep watching it because even though the storyline is a bit fluffed, it's a magical girl anime. How solid can a storyline be about magical girls? But at the same time, I just really liked seeing the real life issues, especially the emotional issues such as PTSD, mental health, portrayed in a realistic way. And I really liked how there were no panty shots. Yeah. There was none of that fan service, which is just so demeaning.
Which is very commonplace, especially in the magical girl genre. I mean, we have seen this rise in the past 5 to 10 years of the sort of dark magical girl story, as opposed to, like Cardcaptor or Sailor Moon style stuff that we would have saw in the late 90s.
Yes, we were watching Magical Girl Sight not too long ago.
And Mirai Nikki was pretty dark. I don't think that's really technically magical girl, but it was a little bit magical. I don't know, it just turned up in my mind.
Yeah.
As dark stuff does.
But we also, all three of us have all went and dove into the treasure chest of new stuff in the past fortnight. Kenny, you've been watching a new anime. Coco's been reading manga. I've also found a new manga. I think we'll start with what Coco's been reading, and that is actually related to what's airing this season, Dororo.
Yes, I have started Dororo. I am trundling my way through it as best I can because I'm currently only reading it on my phone. I should really just make more use of my laptop, to be honest. You can definitely tell who drew it. Obviously, it's got Tezuka's hallmark all through it. I'm really enjoying it so far.
How's it comparing to the anime?
Well, at the beginning, it is pretty much exactly the same. You see the warlord. You see him go into the Temple of Demons, and it's all drawn in the same way as it's animated on the show.
Oh, so this is a modern variation of the Dororo manga? Or
No,
this
is the original.
One?
Oh, wow.
Smashing.
Yeah, you can find it on Manga Rock if you would like to have a look at it.
We need to find out if it's actually got a hardcover English release. Surely it would have something so...
I'd say
that
it
would be a wonderful addition to the shelf.
Yes.
And Ken, you've been doing research into food anime, haven't you?
I have, and spurred on by a couple of listeners of the show, hey Jojo, I found one called Izakaya Nobu. And I don't think the isekai genre is going to die anytime soon. It is a very appealing fantasy.
There's so much material to use for
fantastic. There's something for everyone in this genre itself.
Mm-hmm.
The genre itself is very, very multi-layered. This one is about a very, very stock standard kind of Japanese restaurant suddenly appearing in the middle of a very, very fantasy German European setting. I can't say if it's very like high magic or anything like that. There's a concept of dragons and stuff like that, but
Are there panzer tanks?
there are no panzer tanks. Oh, right, Germany.
But wasn't
This-
there
this
that
isn't-
Girls und Panzer?
Yes, and there's also, you
Sure.
know, thus the JSDF went there and went and destroyed
Yeah.
everything. Which actually brings me on to what I've been reading, which is an isekai, and it's saving 80,000 gold for my retirement in another world.
That is a very specific title.
It's a very specific long title. It's a girl who gets knocked off a cliff in the first episode. All of her family before her have already passed on. She looks quite young, but she's over 18. She's just short. And she appears in this other world and starts introducing food to them. And because it's a fantasy world and this city is landlocked, there's not a lot of fish because it takes forever to get to the city. So she starts serving fish, because she can pop back and forth to Japan.
As many times as she likes.
Yes. She also introduces them to shampoo, opens her own shop, starts doing a catering business
It's
and a
actually quite
consultation.
similar to the one I was reading. Yeah, actually. That seems to be a consistent theme now.
I'd introduce them to banks, and then I'd introduce them to compound interest, and then I'd put maybe $2 in there, and then come back later and see how it's looking.
Okay. That's a very interesting idea. I wouldn't say.
I have thought of this before. You
I
can
believe
probably
we have
tell.
seen Coco's villainous side here.
Yeah, she clearly wants to destroy economy of a foreign
But
kingdom.
legally. Only legally.
Lawful evil is still evil, Coco.
It's lawful though. It's protected.
Ahead in this episode, good cabbage is on the menu
Yeah.
as we look into the culture of food across Japan, whether it's a simple treat like pocky or the ultimate donburi. Japanese food is drawn and described in incredible detail across Japan's media. In this episode's Manga-Kai, we'll be looking at a trio of manga that focus on food, from traditional treats all the way to out-of-this-world dishes. So plenty of silly talking points to go through there. And when it does come to animating food, few can beat the detail and incredible focus that's seen in one of the foodiest shows out there, Shokugeki no Soma, aka Food Wars. But, of course, we'll be amiss if we didn't include some recent live action adaptation series, including a certain sweet-toothed salaryman and a wandering samurai. But before all that, let's head to the newsroom.
Making headlines.
Really? Sort of. Anime news.
Another Lupin the Third film and a new anime partnership with Netflix. This is Kawaii-Fi Anime News. Studio Ghibli are taking an unorthodox approach to Hayao Miyazaki's next feature film, with producer Toshio Suzuki stating the legendary animator has no deadline to complete his work. The comments appeared in the April issue of Bungai Shunju Literature magazine, with Suzuki discussing the upcoming project Kimitachi wa do ikiru ka, translated as How Do You Live? When asked if Miyazaki would ever truly retire, Suzuki explained that his Studio Ghibli co-founder would likely never do so, as he feels most at home while continuing his work on film productions. Netflix has announced a new partnership with 3 anime studios to produce new content for the streaming platform. The new agreement will see Studio Anima creating an Altered Carbon spin-off called Resleeved, with David Productions adapting the Spriggan manga into a series. Alongside them, Studio Sublimation is producing a Dragon's Dogma anime series based on the popular RPG video game. Netflix's existing agreements with production IG, Wit Studios and Bones will stay in place, with several new anime projects on their way, including an adaptation of Icon Comics' Super Crooks by Bones. The website of popular cyberpunk anime series Psycho Pass has announced a 3rd season of the series is in the works, with no release date announced as yet. The franchise has seen 3 new films released this year in cinemas, and will see both director Naoyoshi Shiotani and character designer Akira Amano returning for the project. One Punch Man's 2nd season will start with a broadcast commemorative special, a week before it officially airs. The second season is due to air on the 9th of April in Japan, with the special broadcasting on April 2nd, though no international broadcast date for the OVA is available at this stage. While the news may disappoint some international fans, the announcement still has something for them to look forward to. Saitama's voice actor, Makoto Furukawa, will be performing the season's ending theme song. A new feature-length film in the Lupin the Third franchise is on the way, this time putting the spotlight on one of Japan's most iconic femme fatales. Lupin the Third Fujiko Mine's Lie opens on May 31st in Japan, focusing on the title character being chased into a corner, according to the synopsis. The film is the third to focus on Lupin's companions, with previous installments Daisuke Jigen's Gravestone and the Blood Spray of Ishikawa Goemon sharing the stories of Lupin's two other companions in 2014 and 2017. Steampunk Trains and Zombies anime, Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, is receiving a sequel anime film, according to the series' official website. Wit Studios produced a 12-episode adaptation of the manga series in 2016 and are in charge of producing the upcoming film. The new feature is set 6 months after the end of the season and will apparently serve as the middle point of the story, suggesting more of the series may be on the way. The film will hit Japanese cinemas on May 10 for a limited run. Upcoming original anime series Robi Hachi has unveiled the first look at the new space adventure series alongside an April 8th premiere date. The story is set in the distant future, 50 years after First Contact, and follows an unlucky freelance reporter and a robot being chased by a debt collector through the galaxy. And finally, Funimation and the US arm of Toei Animation have announced plans to release a 30th anniversary Blu-ray collection of the Dragon Ball Z series with a catch. Funimation have said they would need to see 2,500 pre-orders for the collection to be produced, otherwise they'd not consider printing it. The company previously attempted to release a Blu-ray collection of the series in the original 4:3 aspect ratio back in 2011, but due to technical challenges, the restoration was never completed. The announcement of the set shows the 4- and 3-star Dragon Balls, leading to speculation the set could be in its original format. And that's your anime news for the week ending March 17th, 2019.
Take my money.
And
Where do I throw it?
This is why I didn't tell you before the episode.
Link me right now. I need to throw money at this.
That is smashing news. I'm excited. And I'm sorry, they need only make 2,500 sales of that.
Yeah, so that's in the US, so we'll have to see what happens.
Okay.
Right.
We'll still order it. It's Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'll play that on anything.
Dibs.
But yeah, I mean, like that's amazing
So
news.
good.
We'll see what happens. Hopefully, we should know in the coming months as to whether it's going to go ahead. They haven't put up anywhere on their website where you can pre-order it, but I imagine considering the popularity of Dragon Ball Z, and especially with the recent films also seeing that massive interest from cinema goers, there's no way they'd struggle.
With each remaster, I just feel the need to purchase more cells. I need more cells, and I need to buy
animation
frames.
cells or Cell himself.
Sorry.
Yes,
Well,
him
if
as
you
well.
buy the animation cell, it's pretty much like having Cell himself.
Can we get an
isn't
animation
it?
cell of Cell?
There
Is
are.
that Cellception?
They are out there.
Can I get an
They are
animation
out there.
cell of Cell within a cell, showing his cells?
No.
On a cell.
Other than Dragon Ball, Lupin the Third film, number 3.
Yeah, that is going to be so good.
An always welcome thing. Lupin the Third stuff.
Such a classy production, isn't it?
It really is. I think I've told you guys how I discovered Lupin the Third's Castle of Cagliostro when I was quite young, and I found it in I feel really old saying this, but a video store.
Oh,
on
we recently have
VHS.
lost all the blockbusters in Australia,
Yeah,
haven't we?
we had one left who was vying off for one in the US
Yeah.
to be the last one on the planet.
No, VHS are worth bank these days.
What?
They
no.
are yeah. If you can find one in like an original printing, like with the original jacket, and it hasn't been played to buggery.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, seriously. If you look online, you'll see that they are going for a lot of money.
Well, either way, this is the third Lupin film of the recent incarnations looking at the side characters, but there's a lot of people online who want to actually see it focus on Zenigata, the police officer for the fourth film.
I would love that.
He's so long-suffering.
He is, and it would be amazing if it was like sort of a prequel to see where he came from. But who knows? I mean, it's been, 3 years between the last few
Yeah,
films,
about
so
that.
we probably won't know anything for another year or so or two.
That's going to be so good.
I'm
Cannot
perfectly happy to be patient for something like that.
Let's get kicking on because we do need to talk about food and anime, and we have a very special guest to talk on that.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
And now for our feature presentation.
Now featuring...
This episode, we're talking anime food, looking at Japanese food culture and its place in anime and manga. So, what a better place to start than to talk with someone who's researched both anime culture and Japanese food culture. Rebecca Suter is an Associate Professor from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at the University of Sydney. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, hello.
So, just to give our listeners a bit of an idea on your background, you teach in the areas of Japanese language and popular culture studies as well, but you also have some direct experience with manga, I believe.
That's right, yes. So, well, starting when I was a PhD student, and then for few years after that, I've worked as a translator of manga, actually into Italian, which is my first language, doing a little less of it now because I'm quite busy with other things, but I keep up with it. I did one volume last year after a gap of a few years of not doing any manga. I read a lot of manga, both for enjoyment and also for work. So I teach and research about it as well.
That's living the dream, isn't it? Being
That's
able to read manga for work.
Yeah, I know, right? I get paid to read comics,
Great.
basically.
So I guess we'll start kind of from the top of it, and I think Ken had a question on this as well.
I mean, yeah, I've been researching a little bit about Japanese food in preparation for this and just generally eating it for a lot of my life. I was just, curious, how important is food to Japan's cultural identity?
Well, very, I would say. It is in general, I think in a lot of culture. I mean, I don't want to say that Japan is unique in that sense. There's actually sort of the top scholar of Japanese food studies, Kasia Cerka. She's in Leiden in the Netherlands, who wrote this book about Asian food cultures, and she has this introduction where she says, well, food is this really powerful identifier for people, like cultural identifier, so much so she gives a good example. Very often the negative stereotypes about people are around their food, right? Like, how can they possibly eat these disgusting things? But yeah, it's true that in Japan, I mean, it's one of the countries where, food is very important. On TV, there are a lot of cooking shows. Yeah, there's just a very, very well-developed cuisine and food culture. So, yeah, I would definitely say it's quite important.
I've noticed that many Japanese professions have a strong focus on precision and deliberate movements similar to the philosophy behind calligraphy and samurai teachings. What's the philosophy around Japanese cooking?
Well, in that sense, I guess it varies a lot. Maybe what you're thinking of is like sushi, which is, I guess, very high-level cuisine done in restaurants by chefs. And I mean, I guess one can see the samurai connection with the, knives and swords and the way of handling them and cutting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a bit broader than that, though, I guess. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that all of Japanese cooking is grounded in those kinds of high arts. There is also a whole range of other types, like more home-based cooking, which is not necessarily so high-end and so martial arts based as that. Yeah, so I guess it varies a lot. Yeah.
So what sort of culture does Japan have when it comes to eating food for enjoyment? I mean, we see a lot of the media which comes out of Japan focusing on how much they love their food.
And here in Perth, we've had quite a rise of ramen places recently as well.
Ramen, okay.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, ramen is an interesting example actually, because it is it's become one of the iconic Japanese, sort of one of the symbols of Japanese cuisine abroad. Ramen is actually Chinese originally, right? It's something that was imported into Japan from elsewhere. So it is kind of interesting in that respect. But then it has become this iconic Japanese food. What is the culture of enjoyment of food? I mean, again, in this sense, it's one of the many countries where food is sort of valued as a form of not entertainment quite, but I guess leisure. Yeah,
it would be a social lubricant as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, eating out. It's also quite affordable, I guess, in Japan, eating out. So again, there's different levels. Of course, there's super expensive restaurants as well. But it is probably since the 1980s, more or less, there's been a bit of a boom of eating out that continues in Japan. It's also less common in Japan, in big cities, for people to entertain at home or just invite people, spend leisure time in homes, because apartments are very, very, very small.
I have a friend living there at the moment, and from all her photos I've just seen, it is quite small there.
You mentioned obviously that there is that idea of going out as well to meet people, and dessert culture seems to be quite a prominent thing there as well. I mean, going back to even traditional desserts with red bean or mochi as well. Is dessert culture something that's quite prominent over there?
Yeah, and again, when you say traditional desserts, that's another interesting one. They are relatively recent, and in fact, this is something I'm researching a little bit, which is the history of sugar in general, like in the global space and in the Japanese case. They are relatively new, so sort of early modern in the sense of 1700s, 1800s, but then they've become now described as wagashi, Japanese sweets, as in traditional Japanese foods. There is that on one hand, and then the whole world, I guess, of Western style, but again, Japanized sweets, so cakes and so forth.
When you mentioned Dagashi, I thought immediately of Dagashi Kashi. And, of course, we see food playing a prominent part in anime and manga, with characters taking their time to enjoy their meals. Is this part of the idea of Ichigo Ichii, which is treasuring the repeatable nature of a moment?
Yeah, again, yes and no, I guess. So that is the Ichigo Ichii is a concept that is, I guess it's more philosophical, more broadly, but it's deployed a lot in tea ceremony. That's sort of where it's used most, which of course is part of food culture, but at the same time, it's a very ritualized. I don't know if you've ever participated in tea ceremony and had the tea. It's really, wouldn't describe it as pleasant.
I unfortunately
very
haven't.
bitter. You just have a little bit of a taste. You admire the cup. So yeah, it's a little bit different in that sense. So yeah, there is a little bit of this high culture, I guess, that trickles down into contemporary food culture. But no, I would say it's more part of enjoyment of daily life, and I wouldn't call it so.
There's a prominence of sharing food with other cultures in this sort of thing, especially when it comes to sort of like animes which are isekai based or spirited away kind of stories. Is there a great deal of pride in Japanese cuisine for sharing their food with other cultures?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, not only at the daily level of what in pop culture, what people like to do, but even at the level of government policy, there is food is promoted as one of the sort of the again signifiers of national identity. Washoku, Japanese food, literally, was nominated or defined one of the UNESCO intangible treasures or something like that.
Wow.
In 2014, I believe, or 2013. And this was part. I mean, of course, there has to be some government support to apply for these things. So obviously, there is sort of a general attempt at making food a symbol of Japanese culture and an important component of Japanese culture.
I remember right at the beginning of this conversation how you said that you're an Italian national. Yeah, I just wondered, because when I was about 10, I lived in France and we had Dragon Ball Z there.
Right.
We had a few other animes as well. Was it broadcast widely in Italy?
Same, yeah. I think Italy and France were the two first foreign countries that massively imported Japanese anime. Definitely, yeah.
That's awesome.
In fact, Italy even maybe came first, so really it was in the sort of mid to late 1970s that all of robot anime first, and then all sorts. Yeah, definitely Dragon Ball was a very big one as well.
Is it still quite popular? Is it gaining popularity over there?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there's been also this sort of. So I was mentioning before, I was translating manga. So really, it's kind of, I guess, my generation. So people who were children in the late 70s, early 80s, and were watching anime on TV, which was really not perceived so strongly as Japanese. I guess it was just what is on TV.
Yeah.
But then became the readers of manga later, right? So then there's been also this boom of translations of the print versions of manga, and also of more recently produced manga in the 90s and 2000s, and it's kind of also connected to that. So as well as food, actually. When I was a child in Italy, there were very, very few Japanese restaurants, whereas now it's full of them.
Just to finish on, what sort of mangas have you worked on? Is there any names we might recognize?
The latest that I translated last year is this one called Tekkon Kinkreet. It's been made into a movie as well, I think. Matsumoto Taiyo, but they're a little niche, to be honest. May not know them. Yeah. Trying to think if there's anything that is very famous that have not really. So I was working for this publisher that was focusing a bit on more underground or like
like smaller quantity, less known mangas.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today, Rebecca.
Thanks so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.
That was Associate Professor Rebecca Suter from the University of Sydney. She's a lecturer and researcher in Japanese language and popular culture studies, who's also studied the role of food in culture. And with food playing such a big role in Japan's identity, it's only fitting that we start with one of its most significant art forms, literature.
Wi-Fi radio! That anime was a manga?
That manga was an anime?
Manga-Kai.
Yes, food in manga is almost as common as incredible protagonist hair. It tends to appear in almost all series at some point and has an important role to play.
I wish my hair could do that.
My hair kind of always does.
I think the only way to make my hair do what their hair does is to use clag glue.
Or you could ask Kenny for some of his hair techniques. I mean, he looks like he's going Super Saiyan half the time.
It's a beautiful wave of a mane.
First, you lick a light socket, then you hold your head out the window of a moving car.
We
Works
do not
every
condone
time.
what he just said.
Please ignore anything Kenny says.
Please don't
from
try
here
that
on
at
out.
home.
So
you guys don't want to be like me.
There are plenty of manga out there that look at food, but we're going to focus on 3 manga which are fairly recent in the last decade, which have kind of brought a lot of unique ideas around food to the forefront for Western audiences because they weren't areas we knew about. We'll start with Dagashi Kashi, and that ran from 2014 to 2018. And what's quite interesting is that Dagashi itself has a similar principle in our culture, in Western culture, which is the old sweet shop.
Yeah, I remember when I went to primary school, there was one of those delis on the corner. We don't see them anymore. It's such a shame. But there was so many sweets for sale and they're all so cheap. Like you could spend like 20 cents and get a decent amount. Like, yeah, it was great.
It was. The title for Dagashi Kashi can either be read as cheap sweets candy or however. However, which I think is pretty cool considering that they kind of used that in the anime adaptation as well. Whenever there was a gap between episodes, they go, however.
So let's just plug the name right here.
Exactly. We'll put it everywhere. So Dagashi Kashi focuses on a shop called Shikeda Dagashi. It's a small Japanese town, very rural, and Dagashi shop is an old sweet store with traditional sweets, and they're kind of dying out in Japan when they're competing with places like convenience stores like 7-Elevens and so on.
Absolutely.
And the Shikeda family has run this particular store for 9 generations, but Kokonatsu does not want to take over the shop from his
I
father.
love how his name is Coconuts. I know it's Kokonatsu,
Yes,
but it's
everyone
Coconuts.
All of his friends call him Coconuts, which is just
I don't know
great.
why that just amuses me so much.
But his father, Yo, wants him to take it over. He's obviously not having a bar of it. He wants to become a manga artist. And he then what happens is there's a visit from a girl called Hotaru. And she's eccentric, absolutely bonkers. And she's the daughter of a major sweets manufacturer and leads to Coconuts being pressured into taking over the business.
He's getting pressure from a different side in a different way.
By a completely crazy stranger right out of nowhere.
So that's one of the things that amused me so much. Is just how Hotaru's eyes look 100% pure, unadulterated nuts.
Yep. Yep.
She
The
is
lines within
praised.
lines within lines.
Yeah, and his dad. His dad.
Most irresponsible parent I have ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, we're used to irresponsible parents in anime, but I think he takes it to a new level.
I don't know. On a scale of 1 to Gendo, how irresponsible can we get?
Oh, I don't know. We could argue that Gendo was responsible for his country and to himself.
So,
yes, but that is the reason.
But not to parenting. Yeah.
Gendo exists.
So more irresponsible than Gendo?
Well,
horror.
Gendo is in the running for worst dad of the year. So
Horrible father.
So this manga, I've been reading it pretty consistently as it's been coming out translated. It hasn't got an official English translation that's up to date, so there's lots of fan subs out there, and even they're quite far behind. So the manga finished in 2018, and now we're seeing the more chapters still coming out this year, every week or 2 weeks when they can get around to.
This is the struggle I have with After the Rain.
I don't blame you.
I just want to know. I want to know now.
Same with me and Domestic Girlfriend, is waiting for a week and then going, when's it coming online?
It's because of our culture, our society these days. We're just so used to having everything there immediately, within a second's reach.
Binge watching and so on.
Yep.
But so Dagashi Kashi has had 2 anime adaptations, one in 2016 and one in 2018. Now, the 2018 was in shorter form. It was 12 and a bit minute episodes, which initially had me quite concerned, but upon watching it, I realised that that was actually the best way to adapt what they had left in the series.
I felt like there was less craziness in season 2. There was more continuity.
Well, season 1 focused literally every episode on this is this candy and this is that candy and this is that candy, which is the same way they do it in the manga. Every chapter of the manga focuses on a new Dagashi of some form.
Quite. It's the whole idea was that there was a meta plot. The whole thing about trying to pressure Coconuts into taking over the business, into embracing his Dagashi destiny. But there was also the focus on the sweets. And I do recall that because of this series, you, me, Coco, and 2 of our other mates bought like a massive box of the stuff, imported.
Yeah, we threw our money at that.
Yeah.
It's a Japan crate.
No,
Japan
it
box.
was from J-Box, I think. Some
J-List?
No. I'm not sure. It was from one of the groups. It was
This is going back quite a while, but
now we have Japanese stores here, so it's not too much of a trouble.
Because we were watching the show, Google was like, "Oh, targeted ads. You can buy this stuff." I'm like, all right.
Normally that's
Let's
annoying,
do
but thanks Google.
But each chapter focuses on one of those Dagashi sweets. But that happened for almost 200 chapters, and as you can imagine, from a anime adaptation point of front, you want the plot to begin and end in one way or shape or form. And that wasn't going to happen if they did a second season in exactly the same style as the first season. So
of course.
The first season was done by Studio Feel, and it was beautifully animated. The second season was done by Tezuka Productions. And I didn't realize that until I was looking that up for today, because initially I was like, it's a different studio, it's a different writer, it's a different director. Sure, it's got the same audio team on board, but that's
I remember you being initially turned off by the switch in animation.
Yeah, the animation style, particularly for the eyes, changed a fair bit as well, which was
she wasn't as nuts.
Hotaru didn't look as nuts.
More determined.
Yeah.
So either way, lots of silly stories. Can highly recommend you watching it. It does have an English dub if you're after that as well. So worth having a
and
look
watch
for.
out for Saya's tooth.
Yeah.
It's adorable.
It's adorable. Moving on from there was one that actually aired last year, which was Miss Koizumi Loves Ramen Noodles. And that's originally a manga, has been running since 2013, is written by Naru Narumi. And each chapter follows Koizumi, the main character, who is a girl who appears very cold and antisocial.
But
she's got a bit of a problem.
Yeah,
she's obsessed with ramen.
So she completely changes when she's got a bowl of ramen in front of her, and I don't think she's ordered the same thing twice.
No.
So many different, and every time she orders a bowl of ramen, you get a bit of a background
on the history of that ramen,
as to
its
where
location
it's from.
in the country. And
it's a strange kind of a thing. Do you ever see her eat or imbibe anything else in the show?
No.
Does she ever just have a can of drink or an apple or just...
I think she just drinks the broth and eats the noodles and everything else that's in it. I think she just is ramen.
Yeah, but the thing is that, she doesn't drop that cool, cold, non-emotive response unless she's eating ramen or talking about it. And this was so popular that it's actually was adapted into a live-action short series before it even was made into a manga.
I haven't seen it yet. Have you guys seen that yet?
No, so it actually only ran for 4 episodes in 2015 plus a Christmas special. And
Christmas ramen?
I don't know. I don't know.
Is that like plum pudding in the middle of
Maybe it's got reindeer instead of char siu pork.
Ooh, we've had reindeer.
Okay.
That was incredible.
That's
so good.
Okay, now I'm hungry.
You're not going to bring out some more onigiri, are you, with jelly in them?
I make no
Or do you
such
prefer donuts now?
promises.
Jelly-filled donuts?
What are those?
So, what do you guys like with ramen? What's your favorite ramen?
Ooh, I still cannot go past that place I visited in London.
Yeah? What was it called?
Oh,
I think it was shoyu ramen,
yes,
you said?
shoyu ramen. And they do this most beautiful, rich...
It's the Hakata one, wasn't it? The really thick
very
one.
thick, heavy. Oh, but it's at the end so light in the taste, and it was just it was a treat. And they also served frozen Asahi beer with it.
Oh,
So, which I was just like at the
Sounds
time, I'm
perfect.
in London. Why have they got frozen beer where in Australia we don't do frozen beer?
It's probably because in the UK they don't know what cold beer is. So they're just and obviously the Japanese
they
know.
do, just not.
And they're
just
sort of
don't know
making up
what,
they're making up for the rest of the country by having really cold beer.
They do know what cold beer is, provided it's not one of their local ales, because they've got to be left at room a certain temperature, which I believe is normally in the downstairs sort of basement.
Which I believe
of the
is
pub.
madness.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, Australia's so hot, so everything for us must be ice cold.
That is true.
So maybe we're the mad ones.
Kenny, what's your favourite?
cup noodles.
What? Okay.
What kind of cup noodles? I need to know.
What kind of cup noodles? It's gotta be the meat.
Oh no! This is Final Fantasy 15 all
Should we
over, isn't
censor
it?
him again?
What's your favorite topping for cup noodle?
I have a censor button.
You have a center button, but I've got my cup noodles. There's nothing like them. They're easy to make whenever you've got a craving. They're delicious to boot.
Yeah, but just
I'll never forget my first time.
Oh dear!
just don't make them and put them in a thermos and then take them out at work like half an hour later, because the noodles will have drunk up all the broth.
I feel like you're speaking from experience.
Yeah, I made that mistake once and it was just awful.
Oh
my God, that was bad.
Was it basically a big soggy mess of noodle?
Well, the noodles kept together really well, but there was no broth.
Oh.
And I really like the broth.
The disappointment is real.
Which takes us to why I really like tsukemen.
That's the ramen where you dip the noodles into the sauce, isn't
You
it?
get everything in the bowl except for the broth. The broth comes separate. And you just take what you want, you dip it in, and you eat it as you like.
It's super popular as well in Japan, especially in summer, I believe, because then they can give you like a cold broth. Yeah.
That would
And
be good.
That's the thing. There is so many variations of ramen, and this series goes into them. It doesn't just show like her going from restaurant to restaurant eating them.
Mm-hmm.
She explains about them, about
The heritage,
And
the
sometimes
history.
she goes traveling, doesn't she?
Indeed.
Yeah.
To different places.
She's like, I went to Hawaii and I had pineapple ramen. I'm like, huh? Don't get me wrong. This sounds amazingly interesting, but huh? Well, we do need to keep moving on because we're going to run out of time otherwise. So we will quickly cover Dungeon Meshi, which literally is dungeon meals, if it's romanized. But the English translation is Delicious in Dungeon. And this began in 2014 as a monthly sign-in manga. And interesting to note that all three of these mangas we've talked about fit in the seinen category. Admittedly, Dagashi Kashi sits kind of on the border of shonen and seinen, but audience target is both.
It's nice to think of dungeons as being anything other than dank and
Yeah.
cold. Delicious is also nice.
Yeah, it's still dank and cold. So this is set in a fantasy world where explorers head into dungeons to try and find lost treasures. The main cast almost die when they're fighting a dragon, and they lose a member called Fallon who teleports them to safety at the cost of her own life. Now, Laos, who is Fallon's brother, who is also part of the party, is determined to go back and attempt to resurrect her before her body decomposes. Because this is a fantasy world, so resurrection is apparently not a problem.
It's a very, very RPG-centric world, very, very Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, which has been listed as an inspiration for the styling for it as well. But they have no equipment or money, and 2 of their team members leave due to the disaster because they're like, no, we're not going in there. What's the point for us? So they go in and they meet a dwarf who actually lives in the dungeon, which immediately makes them go...
dwarves do.
Well, no, not typically. He shows them how to cook the monsters they kill to keep their costs down.
Which is a fascinating notion, something you don't consider in like an RPG like that. They can bring all of their like cheese and bread and meat with them, but supplies run low. What
Economizing.
do you do? Exactly.
The thing is, everyone in the universe of the manga looks down on that idea, but part of the reason for eating it is every chapter there's a recipe,
which is just a terrifying notion.
And what's the first one?
I can't remember.
I think that was cockatrice, actually.
Yes, it was. And
yes, they slay a giant cockatrice and then they cook its meat and serve it with some mushrooms that are growing on the wall and basically make this delicious chicken, almost, I think it was a ramen, in fact.
Yeah.
And I believe that Heston Blumenthal tried to put one together.
Yes, he
for
did.
a meal.
He did. It certainly...
It was apparently delicious.
It was apparently delicious, but it still looks scary. But this manga we've mentioned several times before in the news because it's been nominated for this year's Manga Taisho Awards, along with the nomination in 2018 and 2016. So it's super popular. It's released monthly, unfortunately. It's not a weekly. But the story's definitely worth a read. So if you're interested, have a check.
Absolutely. And I mean, the fantasy kind of RPG genre is in pretty much vogue at the moment. Dungeons and Dragons is kind of popular again, strangely enough. It's even getting a movie, so I hear.
Another movie.
And yes, well, the less said about those first ones, the better.
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
I think I watched that as a kid.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Back Catalogue.
Yes, and back catalogue today is the eponymous Food Wars.
Food Wars.
Now, if you've not heard of Food Wars, you might be missing out.
Yes.
We do have a bit of a disclaimer beforehand. Food Wars is not for all ages.
It's probably best
15 plus.
Yeah.
It is terrifyingly suggestive to the point where it's not even suggestive, it's in your face.
Yeah, and I think there are some contextual bits that would maybe go over the head of someone who's younger. So, yeah. Not saying it's not worth watching.
Oh, it's definitely worth watching, but it's just a matter of I think if you haven't done a certain educational unit in school, you might not understand what they're getting at.
Yeah.
But Food Wars is an incredible anime. We've actually watched in preparation for this episode all of season 1 in the past week. I love it.
1 down, 2 to go.
I love how it's focused on the food, but there's a solid storyline going through it as well.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, one of the most interesting things about this show, and we'll should obviously start from the beginning. So there is that very strong focus on food, how it's drawn, how it's animated, and the effect it has on people. And it all starts off in a small Japanese diner with the main character, Soma, cooking in a battle with his father.
It's called Yukihira's, yeah?
Yeah. And it's all about this battle between them and also the comedy of them coming up with terrible recipes as well.
It's like they cook amazing food, but they also like to push the boundaries and discover awful combinations.
Such as peanut butter and squid.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of dishes that they do cook. But then there are so many dishes that we've seen that just look amazing. They look difficult or almost impossible to make.
Yeah.
But the series will also go into what goes into a certain dish, how it's cooked.
Yeah.
It can give you an idea of how to prepare it if you are brave enough and crazy enough to try.
Yeah,
It did
any
give us some
takers?
really good ideas for dinner a few times.
Yeah, I will test out anything you guys want to try for that show, except unless it involves squid.
Oh, come on.
Challenge accepted.
What
All
about
else
sardines and jam?
Oh,
So Food Wars is based on a manga. It's got 317 chapters.
Whoa.
whoa!
That's
really?
imposing.
Yeah. I'm going to hit that. I will hit that once we've finished watching the anime. I don't
mean,
want to ruin the surprise there.
It's not like starting something like One Piece, which is, 1,000 chapters
Yeah,
or so now?
something crazy
But
like that.
still like
Or
a...
Naruto.
Similar, yeah. But the series itself has become quite acclaimed for its focus on food, the culture around food, and it doesn't just focus on Japanese culture. It looks at different cultures from around the world. So whether that is, gastronomical cooking like Heston Blumenthal, like we were talking about before, or traditional like countryside Japanese cooking.
Oh, well, no, because the whole idea is that it takes place at this insane academy for foodies with this incredible turnover rate. It's the amount of people that get expelled there is crazy, but this only leads to the most strangest, most almost shonen level of personalities showing up to compete, to show the world their style of insanity and cooking expertise.
Oh, there's never a dull moment.
There really isn't. And to emphasize that, I'd like to play a little sound clip that I found, which really emphasizes what Food Wars is about.
Oh?
Too much for you?
Oh my gosh.
I feel like my ears are being lit. Stop that.
That is a scene when some judges are judging a ramen noodle contest.
You do need visual aids for this sound.
It just sounds so bad without visual.
It just
I feel
sounds...
violated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't
Sorry.
blame you. So there are 3 seasons of this available to watch. I believe several streaming services do have it on their books. So have a look on your local providers, see who's got it, because it's very, very popular. It's a great laugh. There are so many well-timed jokes and puns and little tidbits that you won't see coming.
Yeah,
Just be warned, it is fan servicey.
Yeah.
And to its credit, it is not only fan servicey with the girls, it's fan servicey
Very fan servicey with
guys,
some of the boys.
but it is more fan servicey with the ladies
Of course,
than
of
the
course,
men.
yeah.
So
I feel
just
like
be
we
warned.
were almost prepared for this by watching Grand Blue.
Yes.
Oh, but that was great.
That was glorious. We will discuss Grand Blue in full in another episode. But unfortunately, we are going to run out of time if we don't kick on. So let's talk about some live action adaptations.
Kawaii-Fi Radio. We don't talk about Dragon Ball Evolution.
Or Last Airbender.
Death Note.
Live action.
Yes, as they said, we don't talk about those things because they're bad. Awful, terrible things. I think this is the first ever live action episode we've done. Segment, I should say. So we do have 2 very cool, very interesting live action adaptations which have appeared on Netflix recently. And I think I'll let you 2 start with them because I think each of you researched one of them each. Is that right?
As
Indeed.
in, each of us have binge watched them multiple times.
I mean, yes, this is a fact.
All right. Well,
Have research too.
we'll start with Kenny because you're the one who actually introduced us to this form of show to begin with. And you've been watching
Samurai Gourmet.
Samurai Gourmet.
Now, I discovered this thanks to Netflix, and it says that there is an accompanying manga that's basically what inspired it.
You don't look convinced.
It's impossible to find it.
Oh.
I searched high and low. I searched Google, Yahoo, and even Bing.
No.
Dun, dun, dun.
What? No one searches Bing.
Bing searches
What about
Google.
Ask Jeeves? Is that still
desperate.
going?
Is Ask Jeeves still going?
It is. It's ask.com.
Oh, okay then. I checked Reddit, Manga Rock, the delicious streaming service of Crunchyroll. I found something of it on Baka Updates manga, the cover art. Nothing else. It was thanks to a suggestion by Coco that I managed to use Google Translate to take the title, kanji-fy it, search it back through Google, translate a bunch of pages to discover basically what I was being told by the gods of manga all along. There is no English version of it.
Wow.
I guess we have to just learn Japanese, which slowly but surely we've been trying to do.
Yes, but, you know, very, very hard to find it translated. We might need to call Rebecca back.
Well, so what's the kind of premise behind this series? Because it is to do with food, but it's not like a cooking show.
Oh, no. This show is about comfort, basically. You watch this if you just want to feel pleasant. The whole idea of it is...
We have a bit of a problem with that, don't we? We seem to really feel attracted to
It's not a problem. What are you
these
talking about?
comfy style shows.
Yes, it's in the past few years there have been a bunch of like very, very big, bombastic, action-oriented anime, but we have been strangely drawn to the comfortable and the nice.
All right, so it's comfy. It's about
it's about a 60-year-old man, Takashi Kasumi. He's a pleasant-looking bloke. He looks very, very chipper and happy. He has just recently retired and is now wondering what to do with himself. He's been working for all his life, so he goes for a walk. He checks like the way he used to go to commute to work, and he discovers a restaurant which he had always seen but never gone into. It's just a normal, everyday restaurant. Looks very much like the one I was looking at in that prior anime. And so he decides to simply sit down, enjoy the food, watch it being cooked.
But then something a bit out of the ordinary happens.
Oh yes, a Edo period samurai just walks in the front door.
How?
A gorgeous Edo period samurai, as you pointed out.
Oh yes.
So what do we know about the actor that plays this guy?
I looked up both of the actors. I looked up where they came from. The guy who plays the Edo period samurai is he has been in a bunch of crime dramas, gangster films.
Okay.
He is like the very suave, debonair, sophisticated-looking man. And yeah, I discovered that about him, and I also discovered a bunch of pictures of him appearing in fashion magazines.
Oh,
and
let me have a look.
Damn, he is fine.
He is a
I
manly
think
man.
we should appreciate where appreciation is worth being had. I can't use my words.
So yeah,
He's that good.
This is sort of like the meta plot of the story is he romanticizes samurai. They are bold and assertive wanderers that get whatever they want, and he feels like in this second life of his retired post-work life, he wants to be more of that way. He wants to go where he please, eat what he wants, drink during the day, something rather unheard of or looked down upon in Japanese culture. And so whenever there is a sense of conflict about a turning point where he must decide to be assertive, that is traditionally where you see the samurai come in to say what he would.
I quite approve of that.
That
I
really
approve of his hair too.
Oh, yeah.
You have found some very, very interesting hairstyles on Japanese men recently.
Yeah, it's just
But
awesome.
the main focus of it is more the food, of course. And, oh my God, the way it is shot. I'm a film student, so I appreciate everything about
The
this.
cinematography of the bits I've seen is just phenomenal. The lighting is excellent. The focus on the camera, on the way they use it is wow.
It's an intense focus on like meat being cooked in a pan, simmering in oil. There's a slightly slowed down effect. The focus is just on the cooking, and oh my God, you watch this and every neuron in your brain just screams the three words, I am hungry.
And then you order Uber Eats.
Now, the main actor, lead actor Naoto Takenaka, has been working since the mid-80s, practically non-stop. His IMDb basically says that the man has not taken a year off.
Wow.
He's very talented, very multi-spectrum. He's done a horror film in 2017 called Temple. I looked at the trailer for that, rather spooky. Period pieces of samurai dramas, fittingly enough.
Fair enough.
Shows in restaurants and cooking, so he
Also
clearly has
fits
experience
that,
in this area. He's even been in a few anime movies.
Oh, okay.
He was a quack doctor and a restaurant owner in One Piece Gold, the movie.
Oh, cool.
He was a voice in Fuse Memoirs of a Huntress, which is one that I wasn't familiar with and have now recently added it to my list. It's about hybrid dog-human people that eat souls in the medieval Japanese period.
That's pretty cool.
Sounds awesome.
More than just television and movie appearances, he's directed a small collection of film. He's a screenwriter. And he was once a director of cinematics for a little-known video game called Demento. And I reckon you'll get a kick out of this, Coco. He was a voice actor for a number of imported DC and Marvel cartoons.
Oh, wow.
He's the voice of Nick Fury and Bruce Wayne.
What? Oh, that's awesome.
And according to Wikipedia, he's even a singer.
Wow, there's nothing he can't do. But on the note of very talented actors, I think the certain sweet-toothed character is played by someone incredibly talented as well.
Yes.
Coco's selection.
Oh my goodness. Kantaro, the sweet-toothed salaryman. Has anyone seen the like of it before?
I haven't. Well, except for a Nickelodeon special where they started throwing goo at people, but that's about it.
So well, it's not actually too different because he does get stuff drizzled on him and... Anyway, let me explain.
You need to explain.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Kantaro, Sweet Tooth Salaryman, is an adaptation of a manga of the same name. This is a live-action adaptation.
Which you can find on Netflix.
Yes, you can. It's focused on the main character, Amitani Kantaro. He presents an image of himself that is at odds with the person he really is. He is a salaryman, so he dresses up in a suit, turns up very serious on his work, very focused.
Very businesslike.
Very businesslike and very smart and sharp about it. The inner personality...
is a bit wild.
Is a bit, yeah, it's wired. This guy lives for sweets.
Which is why he quit his prior job to become
a salesman.
A salesman for a book company, yeah.
Yes. This is the only reason he wanted to eat sweets during the day. So imagine the most straight-laced sort of businessman. And what I love about it is that they got a kabuki actor to play the lead called Matsuya Onoi. I didn't know this until I posted about it. And a friend of mine who lives in Japan and who goes to kabuki theatre said, that's my favourite actor.
Wow.
This is what he looks like in the last show I saw him in. And it's amazing. Fully dressed up with all of the face paint. It's beautiful.
And I mean, kabuki is like a very, very traditional kind of Japanese theatre. It's ultra expressive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very, very, if you couldn't express your face like he could.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you quite see that coming through in his performance in this. He is just, like, as Coco said, he presents this image of like straight-laced, cold sincerity. But then when he changes...
Yeah, the inner personality comes out in small hints when he's at work. And what's really awesome to see is that there's an inner monologue running all the time. And he gives sort of hints with his face as to what he's thinking.
Which is, as you can imagine from an actor's point of view, must be a very hard thing to do.
Yes.
To keep up with a script
And
that perfectly in your head.
The wantonness with which Kantaro enjoys his sweets is the polar opposite to his work image. He hyperventilates. He moans. His eyes roll back. He gives himself over completely to his pleasure, and he's so well educated about each little dessert he has, and each of the places he visits are real places. You can go to them. And also, let's go back to the bit where he gets drizzled in stuff. So,
for disclosure, I've only seen a couple of episodes, episode 1 and 2, and in both of them, he's had things thrown at him.
Yes, it was...
it was like the syrup.
Yeah, the white syrup and then the dark syrup.
These are sort of visual representations of the taste.
Yes.
Yeah, what he's experiencing.
Yeah. This is still a little bit of a tapped man, as you'll see in one of the later episodes when his mother, who is a dentist, comes to stay, and she's the reason he is the way he is. He loves sweets, but he was never allowed to have them. So when she comes to stay, he's just like, you know what, I'm still going to eat sweets.
Does that remind you of anyone in particular? Someone who wasn't allowed chocolate as a child, ended up having carob, and have an intense distrust for the carabine ever since.
I know. It's such a shame. But look at you now.
You are so hurt and damaged.
any lollies you like.
Which is exactly what I'm going to do after we finish this show. I am going to go to the local Japanese sweet shop and fill up my bag with Dagashi.
I'm getting cup noodles.
Well, I do love the sound of pretty much everything in that episode.
Everyone needs to watch Kantaro just once, just to see.
It
to
is
appreciate.
a truly unique experience.
I mean, prepare yourselves, viewers. This is...
And especially if you are going to go to Japan, this is a great way to find some local places which do traditional sweets. I mean, you might have to go outside of standard hours to get in there because apparently they're very popular, but it's a good option.
それは神のみぞ知る
Kawaii-Fi Radio.
Well, that is almost all the time we have today, but we do have to talk about one very important proverb.
Oh?
What's that?
Good cabbage equals good anime.
My cabbages!
Some say that the anime that started it all was Yoaki ma Yoru Rurito na.
Oh, good job.
So, I struggled with that. Is also known as Crescent Love. Now, this is a 2006 anime series which became infamous because of how poorly drawn the cabbage was in episode 3.
I think I saw this over your shoulder. It looks more like
Was
a
it like-
melon.
Yes,
A
the
green
cabbage is
lump?
literally a round green ball, which was then cut in half and just had some circular lines inside.
So lazy.
Now,
It needs
terrible.
veins.
This caused a massive reaction online. It's generated memes galore, everyone taking the mickey out of it. It's gone completely meta where other animes have taken
and
the
I think
mickey out of it.
other studios have said to themselves, we're not going to make the same mistake.
Yep. So the poor reception of the scene even led to the company redrawing the entire series from scratch for the DVD release.
I'm
Whoa.
glad they listened.
Yeah, it's quite impressive that they listened. I have heard online, but I haven't been able to verify this, that apparently the shareholders publicly apologised for how badly it was received.
It's a cabbage.
Yeah. Ever since then, it seems to be a well-known rule that you don't draw cabbages bad. So much so that cabbages are drawn better than the rest of the show they're in.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, you have a look at some of the more recent shows where cabbages are involved, and the cabbage is higher quality animation than some of the normal animation in the show. Even to the point that some of them actually bring in photos and CG them in.
So cabbages are a big deal.
Cabbages are a big deal.
I mean, it's a
however,
staple
we
food,
we
but-
have heard there's also the opposite. So now that everyone's doing really good ones, there was literally the year following this series muck-up, the opposite end of the scale, where an anime called Hayat the Combat Butler mocked the bad cabbage by creating their own cabbage, where all the other ingredients were pristine and epic, and the cabbage was a rotund, round green ball.
Boy.
They cut it in exactly the same manner.
And what were you saying, Kenny, about cabbages
There's
in live action?
There's a live action show coming up, which is an adaptation of an anime we've seen.
Yes. If you guys remember, it's called School Live Club.
Oh yeah,
I remember
that
that.
one's a bit mentally.
It's a very, very dark zombie anime, and
Either way, that anime had really good cabbages growing on the roof.
oh yes, they have a little farm on the roof. This is where they get their nutrition.
What's
their
wrong with the
daily food.
cabbages then?
Okay, so in the live action series, they look like green rotund balls.
As in, like, store-bought? There's no growing
As
leaves?
in store-bought.
As
All
in
of the outer leaves have been taken
Oh,
off it. They
no.
look just...
So they
Like
just
someone's
went to the
grabbed it in the
store
supermarket and shoved it in the
and
ground.
just dumped
Yes.
them.
Oh, it's
Judged by
terrible.
cabbage. That's the life that we now
And
live.
of course, that has been receiving the same controversy as the original rotund melon ball thing.
Did they not do their research?
Apparently not. Well, ever since there's been memes that you can now judge if an anime's quality is good based on how good the animation of the cabbage is, and I think that's a terrible way to judge anime, but it's also hilarious.
If it works.
And if it works, it works. Well, next episode we will be looking at the surprisingly frequent use of episode 6 for hot springs and beach episodes.
Oh.
Now, it seems that episode 6 and occasionally 7 are the home of the fan service spot in the middle of a season to thank people for watching the series. And we will look back at the season's anime in the past. Why are you cackling, Coco?
It's just funny. It's like, oh, thanks for watching. Have some boobs. Have some arms.
Have a bit of lovey-dovey bit, which makes no sense to the plot, but it'll be
Yeah.
great for your visual stimulation. So we will get obviously cover off all the anime we've been watching this season, what we've enjoyed. We'll try and find if we can get some nice music to go along with it as well, so you can know what we're talking about when we're talking about the opening themes. But between now and then, make sure you check out plenty of anime online. Have a look at Food Wars if you're interested, and if you're a big manga reader, definitely check out Dagashi Kashi, Miss Kozumi Loves Ramen Noodles, and, of course,
After the Rain.
not where I was going, but we'll go with that.
I think everyone should check out After the Anyway.
It does have an element of food to it. Go
And if
figure.
you've got
There
a nice
is.
streaming service like Netflix, check out something that you haven't seen before. Like,
Yeah.
there's always little hidden gems in those things.
We'll see you next time. Have fun.
Cheers.
Bye.